Hi there, how are you all doing? Just getting settled. Right, today I'm looking at Donald Trump and Qatar to begin with, and then we'll see where we go from there. So hopefully I can get enough time to do a little deep dive into Qatar, where Donald Trump gets his money from, where does Qatari get their money from, and how it all intertwines maybe with public favours, political favours, and see if there's anything on the end of that. And also we can do some British politics as well. We've got Keir Starmer's done a deal with the EU, apparently subsides all our fishing waters. But that's just what I've heard through the great line. Right, so feel free to chat along. I'm going to do some notes while I'm here, so it's more of a chill stream. Tuesday's my big stream, but today I just did a little bit of research and make some content for my YouTube channel, which you can go and subscribe to. You can.
We'd all have been pretty upset on the right. We might have said that it was worthy of some coverage.
Watch Ben Shapiro has actually been critical of Trump for once. Yeah, I notice he does this when Israel comes up.
Now, again, as I say, does this mean that all the tariff wars are over? Does this mean that we are moving toward a more free trade world? No. It means there's still going to be tariff barriers, which is why I think that the stock market's jump today is maybe a little overstated. And as reality sets in, it's going to settle about back where it was, maybe a little bit lower than it was before Liberation Day, so-called Liberation Day. Here's Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, saying 10% tariffs remain here. They're not going anywhere.
So we do expect a 10% baseline tariff to be in place for the foreseeable future. But don't buy the silly arguments that the U.S. consumer pays. Businesses, their job is to try to sell to the American consumer and domestically produce.
This guy is evil. What was his background prior to this? Like, at least Bessent, you can tell when he's speaking. He looks like he's, like one of his balls are being crushed. Like, you can kind of tell that Bessent's like, I got to sell this somehow. This guy is just a total subhuman, disgust. He's like the economics version of Stephen Miller. I hate this guy. He's shameless.
These products are not going to have that tariff.
However, the reason that the markets are in fact optimistic is because, as James McIntosh writes over at the Wall Street Journal, the grown-ups are in the room. The reason for the giant bounce in the stock market is because Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is now in control of trade policy and presumably in control of regulatory policy and tax policy as well. So what exactly is Bessent still looking for? A deeper reform of the Chinese economy, turning it from a mercantilist exporter into a consumer and leading to more balanced trade. Now, again, that is going to be hard, but the reality is we are now avoiding the hurricane that was approaching, and I think the economy is responding to that in very good ways. So good for.
I'm just going to go straight to Ben Shapiro for this. I don't want to have Destiny's in the background. Ben Shapiro. Where's the Trump money one? That's what I'm interested in. Testing 1, 2. That's fine.
If you want a peaceful Middle East, the United States has always had a thumb on the scale. Only President Trump has properly used that thumb in order to achieve peace in the Middle East. Meanwhile, President Trump has also rejected the soft Biden-Obama approach to Iran. So yesterday in Saudi Arabia, he said that he wouldn't hesitate to wield American power.
I will never hesitate to wield American power if it's necessary to defend the United States or to help defend our allies. If you threaten America or our partners, however, then you'll be faced with overwhelming strength and devastating force. We have things that you don't even know about.
And so then he slammed Iran, And he said, listen, the choice is for Iran to make. He said he slammed Iran. He said they're a terror-spreading entity. Saudi, of course, agrees with this. So this is a popular perspective in Saudi Arabia.
Our task is to unify against the few agents of chaos and terror that are left and that are holding hostage the dreams of millions and millions of great people. The
I mean, he does
and
have
most
some balls to
destructive
get up
of
there and
these
say that.
forces is
Gamil,
the
how you
regime
doing?
in
It's been a
Iran,
long time.
which
I
has
hope you're
caused
well.
unthinkable suffering in Syria,
Hope you can hear me
Lebanon,
okay.
Gaza, Iraq, Yemen.
I'm listening to Donald Trump waffle on about foreign politics in Iran. What have you been up to?
And beyond. There could be no sharper contrast with the path you have pursued on the Arabian Peninsula than the disaster unfolding right across in the Gulf of Iran.
Okay, so
Powerful
again,
stuff.
his views on Iran are correct. He said the choice is for Iran to make. He said that if Iran doesn't get off the nuclear train, then there will be consequences.
Garden
But with that
reworks.
said, Iran
I like
can
that.
have
Does
a
that
much
involve?
brighter-
Does that involve alcohol? Is it? It's for 4:45. You can drink, right? Garden work and beer goes in hand. But I'm trying to grow poppies, not for heroin reasons, but I got an advert on Facebook, and it was like, you can get not poppies. What am I talking about? Roses. That's what I meant. Roses. You can get roses which can climb up your wall and over your house and make your house look better. So I bought poppy seeds, and they haven't grown. I think I got ripped off. Oh, you're doing driving excavator work. That's how big's your garden? Jesus Christ. Are you like digging up a corpse so you can put a tree in?
future, but will never allow America and its allies to be threatened with terrorism or nuclear attack. The choice is theirs to make. We really want them to be a successful.
I didn't mean poppies. I meant roses. Oh, Jesus. Who grows poppies? I mean, why would you go out and buy poppies? Unless you're like, V-Day, what's it called? VE Day? Or, someone's dead. You don't really use poppies. I meant to say climbing roses.
Country. We want them
It's
to
the
be
most
a
emasculating thing I've said all
wonderful,
day.
safe, great country, but they cannot have a nuclear weapon. This is an offer that will not last forever. The time is right now for them to choose. Right now, we don't have a lot of time to wait.
So
This isn't the video I wanted to watch. Where's the one about his plane? Iran. Courtroom movie scenes. Oh, I can't find it. I'll have to go back to Destiny. How annoying.
he was talking about was an executive order designed to lower the price of pharmaceuticals. So here's what he said. He put out a statement on Truth Social. Says, for many years, the world has wondered why prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States of America were so much higher
I do
in price
politics
than they were
now,
in any other
Gamil.
nation. Sometimes
That's
being
what I
5 to
do
10
now.
times more expensive than the same drug, manufactured in the exact same laboratory or plant by the same company. It was always difficult to explain and very embarrassing because, in fact, there was no correct or right answer. The pharmaceutical drug companies would say for years it was research and development costs, and that all of these costs were and would be for no reason whatsoever borne by the suckers of America alone. Campaign contributions can do wonders, but not with me and not with the Republican Party. We are going to do the right thing, something the Democrats have fought for many years. Therefore, I am pleased to announce that tomorrow morning in the White House at 9 a.m., I'll be signing one of the most consequential executive orders in our country's history. Prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced almost immediately by 30 to 80%. They will rise throughout the world in order to equalize, and for the first time in many years, bring fairness to America. I will be instituting a most favored nations policy whereby the United States will pay the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price anywhere in the world.
Damn.
Our country will finally be treated fairly. Our citizens'
Finally.
healthcare costs will be reduced by numbers never even thought of before. Additionally, on top of everything else, the
Yeah,
United States will
people
save
like
trillions of
me, immature people like me, are the perfect thing to do to solve complicated philosophical and political problems. I reckon more poppies. Everyone needs to have poppies. But I get to pick on the Qataris because they're easy.
You can get away
Thank
with
you for
that.
your-
Like, how much is it going to save? An amount that you wouldn't believe. Okay.
attention to this matter. Make America great again. Okay,
It's
so
always like these.
there are a few things he's trying to do here. One is he's trying to find savings in the big, beautiful tax bill that do not require cuts to Medicaid. And one of the big issues with the quote-unquote big, beautiful tax bill is the question of where cuts are coming from that Republican Congress people want
Yeah.
to make the to make the tax cuts, quote unquote, deficit neutral. And
Get
so
to
some
the
of the
point
questions have
where
been, are they
it
coming from
gets to
Medicaid? And so what
play.
he's saying is we're going to lower the price of Medicaid without cuts because we're going to allow Medicaid to basically tie the price that it pays to the pharmaceutical companies.
I guess I just don't think tips should be income. You don't think tips should be income? What do you call the thing that somebody
great question
makes
there
to
from an idiot.
survive from their job? What would you call that besides income?
Called income. You get taxable
for
income. All income
pharmaceuticals
should be
to the
taxed.
lowest possible price, like whatever price Sierra Leone is paying or whatever. Make no mistake, this is a backdoor price control. It is not in any way a free market policy.
True.
Backdoor
What we
price
actually should be
control.
doing, and this is something that President Trump should be doing with regard to his tariff policy, is forcing other countries to pay a higher price for the medications that are produced.
Holy shit! Did he watch a Destiny stream? Yeah, if you really want to fight on market forces, you could tell other countries, listen,
Hang
I
on,
don't like
what-
the price
what-
caps that you're
What's Ben wearing there? I don't want to listen to
setting on our drugs.
Dingleberry
They pay
McGee.
the
I
other
want-
end of that. American consumers are overpaying because all these over 50% of all pharma, 22% higher prices for brand name drugs than do other members of the OECD, the other developed countries.
Oh,
That is a reality. And so, for example, the idea that Americans wildly overpay for drugs and other companies in order
Let's
to
talk about
develop
medication
things, they
here.
never come to
Hang on.
fruition. It's a very high risk, it's a very high risk investment product, biotech and pharma. And that means it needs to be high reward on the other end, because otherwise, why would you sink that much money into the development of these new pharmaceuticals, for example? If you destroy the
All right,
profit
mate.
margin,
Take
you just
care.
won't get
Enjoy
R&D.
your
There's a reason
excavation.
that over 50% of all pharma
And
patents are filed
buy
in the
yourself
United
a whiskey
States.
on
We're
me.
the home of that stuff because they can generate profit in the United States in a way they cannot in the UK or in France, Germany, or Canada. It also means that American consumers bear the brunt of these brand new drugs. Now, over time, as these patents expire, as generics come on the markets move
God,
toward the
this is
generic.
really
Countries to pay
complicated
more.
this time of day.
Other countries should be absorbing more of the cost. We could be using the tariff war that he has waged on pretty much every country
To
in order to
negotiate.
get them to more fairly allocate resources for drug
True.
purchase from the United States.
True.
Because the problem is this: if you artificially destroy whatever profit margins exist for the pharma companies, you just won't get drugs developed. It's that simple.
True.
R&D costs a fortune. The vast majority of drugs that are developed in R&D never make it to market. They fail out in phase 2, phase 3 of the FDA
True.
trials.
Wow.
Oh, hang on.
Wow.
Most never even make phase 3. There are literally tens to hundreds of billions of dollars that get spent every year by pharmaceutical companies and other companies in order to develop things.
I'll have to fact check all this, but look. I'm happy with that.
That never come to fruition. It's a very high risk. It's very high risk investment product, biotech and pharma. And that means it needs to be high reward on the other end, because otherwise, why would you sink that much money into the development of these new pharmaceuticals, for example? If you destroy the profit margin, you just won't get R&D. There's a reason that
If the profit margin is, you don't get the same research and development. I think that's what he
over
said.
50% of all pharma patents are filed in the United States. We're the home of that stuff because they can generate profit in the United States in a way they cannot in the UK or in France, Germany.
Oh, that's such a good point.
or Canada. It also means that American consumers
Canada.
bear the brunt of these brand new drugs. Now, over time, as these patents expire, as generics come on the markets move toward the generics. Hey, that is a reality. And so, for example, the idea that Americans wildly overpay for drugs, just generally speaking, Americans wildly overpay for brand new drugs that are cutting edge.
But not
That's
the
true.
generics.
Americans can also choose or have influence on the medication they receive.
But the truth is, the vast majority of medication that we actually consume is not cutting-edge, brand-new R&D drugs. Here, for example, is a chart about what Americans pay for drugs. And what this chart shows is that 91% of drug purchases in the United States are not for brand-name drugs. We pay 422% higher prices for brand-name drugs than do other members of the OECD, the other developed countries. However, when it comes to generic drugs, we pay 67% of what gets paid in the OECD. So when you actually weight the average, what you find is that the United States overall actually pays less for drugs than comparable countries do. We pay more for the cutting edge drugs because they're being produced in the United States, and other countries are basically free riding off the back of that. Generic drugs, because we have a free market system.
Ah. So Americans pay more for cutting edge drugs, but less than Let me hear him say that again.
Shows is that 91% of drug purchases in the United States are not for brand name drugs. We pay 422% higher prices for brand name drugs than do other members of the OECD, the other developed countries. However, when it comes to generic drugs, we pay 67% of what gets paid in the OECD. So when you actually weight the average, what you find is that the United States overall actually pays less for drugs than comparable countries do. We pay more for the cutting edge drugs because they're being produced in the United States, and other countries are basically free riding off the back of that. Generic drugs, because we have a free market system, generic drugs are really cheap here compared to generic drugs in, say, Canada or the UK, France, or Germany. And so, because the vast majority of drugs we consume are generic drugs and not brand name drugs, that means overall we actually pay less for drugs. So why is it that the United States pharma spending is out of control? The answer is
So Americans pay more for cutting edge drugs. Oh, that's interesting. Thank you, Ben.
we consume an awful lot of medicine in this country. We consume an enormous amount of medicine. We are fat.
Oh,
we are out.
I do politics. How you doing? Hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm listening to Ben Shapiro talk about the U.S. medical, biotech and pharma situation in the U.S. because it's something I've always wondered why Americans have such expensive medical healthcare, and I'm just brushing up on those few things. And I was looking into Qatar and Trump's really expensive plane. So feel free if you want to chat. But at the moment, I'm just talking to people, answering questions, and writing notes at the same time. So it's more of a chill out stream here.
Something that obviously the Make America Healthy Again movement has focused in on. We're fat, we eat crap, we don't exercise, and then we try to heal ourselves on the back end with drugs. So we take...
Oh, that's a great point. I mean, Americans live in excess. Oops, excess. Excess. Well, how can I write that in a better way? Excess. Come on, excess. There it is. America's Ben Shapiro has an excellent way with words. Let's listen to that again.
drugs we consume are generic drugs and not brand name drugs. That means overall we actually pay less for drugs. So why is it that the United States pharma spending is out of control? The answer is we consume an awful lot of medicine in this country. We consume an enormous amount of medicine. We are fat. We are out. This is something that obviously the Make America Healthy Again movement has focused in on. We're fat. We eat crap.
Unfortunately, I have to use Destiny's podcast because I can't find this video where Ben Shapiro talks about this. So I'm kind of using Destiny's stream to listen to Ben Shapiro. So usually I don't do that.
We don't exercise, and then we try to heal ourselves on the back end with drugs. So we take many, many more drugs than people who are living in Canada, France, UK, Germany. Now, what do you do about that 422% overage when it comes to brand name pharmaceuticals? The answer is you force other countries to pay their fair share. This is where a tariff war and pressure really should be exerted, is getting the UK not to lowball American pharma. Make the UK...
Well, we don't. We have, we're in a surplus here in the UK, so do you think larger points for the most part? Yeah, I kind of do. I mean, I know he's a conservative in the US, but how he describes things, of course, he has his biases, his conservative biases. But if you can put that to one side, he does a fair job on a case by case basis. Like, I kind of understand where he's coming from on the medical side here. So I think he makes a lot of sense in that. But to be more specific, we have to choose what specifically he's talking about.
Hey, tight its
what
prices.
you want to.
To America's free market prices. Why should they get
specifically
the free ride off the back of the American consumer?
Because different markets compare different costs.
On a case-by-case basis.
He's closer than most people are on this, at least.
So what is President Trump doing instead? He's saying that Medicaid should tie its price
Sorry, I got
to what the
things-
UK is paying.
screens
What is that
going all
actually
over
going
the
to do?
place.
Well, number one, it
Stop
means
it.
many cutting-edge pharmaceuticals simply will just not be available through Medicaid.
What do you think of Ben Shapiro?
Because Medicaid can't pay for it. You see this, by the way, all the time in Medicaid. You see that many doctors, for example, don't take Medicaid because the reimbursement rates are too low. Specialists, very many of them will take cash only or private only because the Medicaid reimbursement rates are too low. So you can see that happening with pharma. That you need a cutting-edge drug and Medicaid just won't provide it because the price is too low and big pharma's like...
The thing is, for me, I have many sources from all over the place, so I kind of listen to the left and the right, and boring centrists. So I kind of build a big picture of kind of what's going on. So it's often that everything has its biases, but it's important for me to work out what I think is right, and then work out from there what the best arguments are. But if there's no evidence behind something, it's pointless even parroting.
Like, no, you know what? We can't afford to give it to you at that price. Even if Medicaid does, in fact, provide for that drug, and they get that drug from Big Pharma, all that means is that the now higher prices to compensate for the lower prices for Medicaid get squeezed into the private sector. So it's not that the pharmaceutical companies are going to quote, make less profit. They're greedy
until Ben
pharmaceutical
Shapiro
companies,
finishes
and they're
his
stashing away cash
rant
in the back
on
room. Is too low,
Medicaid.
and
I
Big
just
Pharma's
wanted to
like,
see if
no,
I
you know
can
what? We can't
understand it
afford
before
to
I
give
move
it to you
forward.
at that price. Even if Medicaid does, in fact, provide for that drug, and they get that drug from Big Pharma, all that means is that the now higher prices to compensate for the lower prices for Medicaid get squeezed into the private sector. So it's not that the pharmaceutical companies are going to, quote unquote, make less profit, that they're greedy pharmaceutical companies and they're just stashing away cash in the back room and all this kind of, that's not true. It's not true. That's not how Big Pharma works at all. What will actually happen is that people who have
I
private
think
insurance will pay
personally,
more
he's
for their
usually
insurance
stupid,
premiums.
broken clocked.
And insurance companies will pay
type
significantly
stuff. He's usually
more
correct,
on the other
but
end.
largely bigoted. Okay.
So this attempt to, quote
In what areas do you think he's bigoted? I'm interested to know.
unquote, lower prices, in the aggregate, it's not going to lower prices. In the aggregate, it may lower prices on the available drugs from Medicaid, but it will increase.
I mean, they're bigoted towards whom? Like a group, or like an identity, or is he bigoted in his on specific matters? Let me know.
Prices for everybody in the private sector. And with regards to sort of the overall reduction of prices, there's no way to do that without also destroying the R&D. This is a point that the Wall Street Journal actually made last week. What will actually happen is that people who have private insurance will pay more for their insurance premiums. And insurance companies will pay significantly more on the other end. So this attempt to, quote unquote, lower prices, in the aggregate, it's not going to lower prices. In the aggregate, it may lower prices on the available drugs from Medicaid, but it will increase prices for everybody in the private sector. And with regards to sort of the overall reduction of prices, there's no way to do that without also destroying the R&D. This is a point that the Wall Street Journal actually made last week.
Oh, okay.
They pointed out that drugs accounted for less than 4% of Medicaid spending, $21.2 billion in 2023. The Feds
Changing
spent 10 times
prices.
more on hospital payments. Even if Republicans required drug makers to give away medicines to Medicaid, savings would not actually amount to what Republicans need in terms of this tax bill. They need $880 billion in savings. Trying to wring more money out of drug makers might cause some companies to stop participating in Medicaid, as we discussed. This is the Wall Street Journal. Patients would then suffer from less access to novel treatments as they do in countries with socialized health systems that impose price controls. Some
Hang on, let me just write that down. It's quite an interesting point you just said. I'll read that in a second. When it comes to human rights, immigration, LGBT, women's rights, abortion, quite a lot, actually. But yeah, I suppose he's a good representation of the American right. You know, I agree. I think it's his religiousness which kind of hinders his ability to think on that, like on how we believe on what is moral. I mean, I can imagine he doesn't I mean, I don't know his actual views on things like same-sex marriages and things like that. I don't think he's particularly very aggressive in that side, and especially with LGBT rights, which I think that falls into the same category. I do understand that, but I think once you can push that aside, Ben Shapiro can be useful for like fairly accurately talking about things that don't involve those. Like I think he's done a pretty fair job here talking about the medical issues and how what the knock-on effect of putting the thumb on the scales of price controls can affect like the medical industry and research and development. I understand that, but I do agree with you. Politics. I do politics. I kind of agree with you on that behalf. You are right. When you said bigoted, for a split second I couldn't think of something, but I was thinking more of like his Israel Palestine like views. But when you talk about that, it's like, yeah, that is correct. It's a very outdated way of looking at the world through a conservative lens.
Drug makers already lose money on medicines they sell to Medicaid. They compensate by raising those prices in the commercial market. And that is likely to be what the future looks like. And the notion that free market economies, that they don't adjust and move with regard to regulation, it's not true.
And I think overall that's the biggest issue when it comes to religion and politics. I feel like if you've got someone who's quite cerebrally capable, like Ben Shapiro, I think a lot of that is wasted when there's very strict religious angles can affect your judgment. Because I really think if Ben Shapiro wasn't Jewish, I think he would have a more open mind when it comes to LGBT rights. But like I said, I don't know his position. I just presume he's what you're saying. He has a bigoted view towards. Hang on, what views does he have for women's rights? You're saying it's abortion. Okay, so I could imagine he's not for. I guess he's not pro-choice in that regards. Which has now become pro-choice is pretty much most people in the European Union believe that pro-choice is the way forward. It's very rarely you get people who was it pro-choice and what's the other term? It's pro-choice and pro-life. Yeah, that's it. Oh, hang on, my Amazon delivery's here. 1 second. 2 seconds. Hey, my jump cables arrived. What's a man without his jump cables? Right, where was I? Pro-life, yeah. I hope that makes sense. But is he a good representation of the American right? I think he's more of he's a representation of a specific right-leaning American. I think you can put American right into a few categories. But considering his popularity as a whole, I think he does represent the American right on some things. I can't believe I hate to think that everyone follows him tooth and nail with his ideas.
Just quote unquote charge whatever they want.
8 out of 10 major drug manufacturers spend more on advertising than on research and development. I don't know what the point of that statement is. In the U.S., for some reason, we have it legal to have we do commercials for drugs here, so that's not. I don't think that's not surprising. We're probably spend a fuck ton of money on advertising.
Because eventually the patents expire.
Although I do have a guilty pleasure, I do enjoy watching Destiny. I think it's a good to have a balance of different people's opinions for American politics per se. So I do listen to Destiny from time to time. I try not to let its personal life get into my judgment.
Number one. Number two, there's competition in the marketplace. And so other big pharma companies are trying to encroach on the territory of you discover a new drug, and within 5 minutes, somebody else is trying to discover a new pathway for the new drugs. You can see this with Ozempic. Right? Ozempic was really, really expensive, and very, very quickly, you're seeing people fill the marketplace for Ozempic with knockoffs, other semaglutides, people who are attempting now to create oral versions of Ozempic, so you don't actually have to take a shot, for example.
They could cut a lot of the cost without cutting into R&D. Yeah, but if they cut all their advertising, they probably wouldn't sell as much. So it wouldn't matter if they developed a new drug, no? What do you mean? I thought of the best idea ever, guys.
Out of curiosity, do you find yourself affiliated with a certain political viewpoint? I actually did a political compass test. I did 2 of them, actually. So there, I became, as you see here, it came out as centre-left. But remember, I'm in the UK, so our politics works slightly different on the scale to America, if you are in America. I consider myself fiscally right, but socially left. Kind of small government. But I did that one that came centre left. But, whoops, not that one. Where's the other one? and then I got the ambivalent right on the other one. So, but things change. I mean, I always like listening to good ideas, and I'm happy to change my opinion when it comes to like really good ideas. So I'm very malleable, which I don't really stick to anything unless it's like something I really agree on. Like things that I can't, like things of my moral compass, like I certainly think maximizing freedom of the individual to be quite up there with what I think is right. So I tend to choose political opinions which maximize individual liberty. I think people should have the most amount of choice. So how about yourself?
Stop advertising. We can save so much money. Yeah, no shit.
Like the market does an amazing
Except you
job
won't sell
of
anything.
taking what were luxury products.
Yeah, you know what? I actually just Googled them. I mean, I was trying to find one that didn't take all your personal information. There's only like 16 to 20 questions. Let's see if and I haven't saved it. I've only just saved the picture. So let's see if we can get any advice. Hang on. All right, come on. There's no indication there. I don't know. I don't know how helpful they are because, for example, like depending on what questions they ask you, it might not be relevant. Like it might give you kind of milquetoast answer. So, if it came up with like for example, like abortion or like pro-life, then it might put a certain weight on your answer, and other ones like other political compass tests might do a different value. So since I kind of answered the same, this one was actually quite good, but I don't have the name of them. I just Googled them. I just did political compass tests and avoid the first one because it looked a bit shit and cheap. Then but don't give your details away because you know, if they find out what we really believe, we could be in trouble. How do I get rid of that? There we go. I'm more so on the left, but still discovering space. Hey, that's good to hear. I mean, I think it's always, I mean, I used to be quite far on the right, and ever since I found Twitch and started interacting with people, I've come more center. So I know what it's like to be on the right. So I kind of sympathize a bit with like some attacks on the right, which some are warranted and some aren't. But so being more on the left is quite new for me. So, well, further to the left, I'd still say I'm kind of center right if I had to pick one. But I still think, depending on a topic by topic basis, I'll sympathize with more left-leaning social issues and rights.
And making them available to the common man. This is true everywhere. It's true in medicine too. Things that you now consider to be absolutely baseline medical care, say chemotherapy if you have cancer. That stuff was considered a luxury item way back when. Because when you first develop this stuff, it's expensive. This is what capitalism does. Capitalism takes luxuries and it makes them available to the common man. I mean, look at your cell phone. Go back and watch Wall Street, a movie made in 1987 by Oliver.
I'm sick of you. Talk about the plane.
But
How did that happen? Didn't happen through government subsidization of cell phones.
probably should do a drug. They'll probably say like, listen.
Always.
There was an old golfer named Sam Snead. Did you
Oh,
ever
here we
hear-
go.
So that's bro. I see some that feeling when I sleep.
Adventure.
Oh, here we
Flying
go.
to
This is the
clouds.
plane.
Passengers instead.
This is what I wanted to
And
see.
it's not just the
A
Trump's $400
interior.
free plane.
Got bigger than 740, but he'll be able. This is why I get mad when
God.
people talk about like senators and congressmen are all there.
But
I wish
next day,
Destiny-
let's buy
Wish Destiny wasn't playing stupid games in the background because I can't work
Another
out what
one.
people are saying.
It's a lot of money. But no,
Like that gifts is
for free and
do an Aspen slot prediction before the plane clip. I feel like this is like an easy one for him to
So
like
what
laugh and
tenets?
meme
I
along,
do
but it's like,
politics. What do you value highly in society over other things? Like, do you think money should be more fairly distributed, or would you be more fiscally liberal in that regard?
oh yeah, it's probably bad.
I mean,
think he's
also,
not gonna
it'd be good
focus
to know
as
what
much on how
country
actually
you
bad
hail
it is.
from.
I think he's
if
just
you
gonna say
wanna
it looks
let
bad,
me know.
but he'll be able to cut because this is like an easy one. This is a gimme. It's like, oh yeah, obviously, right? That's my guess. We'll see.
the Democrats are complaining. Bro, I'm telling you, like we are gonna be entering into an era. I heard it's fake to get us into war with Iran. I don't think that's it at all. Who's
Shut up, had some gold.
Unveiling luxuries inside.
Right, I
$418.5
can't deal
million
with-
Boeing.
Stealing from other people. Let's see what else I've got on my playlist. Pakistan and India's calmed down a bit.
There's 62
learned a
countries
little
around
bit
the
about
world
a
today who have
Qatar.
small populations of less than 3 million
Random, I know.
people. Because of their small size, they're all generally limited in their power and influence to their immediate surroundings. And even then, in the case of places like Armenia, Moldova, or the Gambia, they're usually minor players even within their own neighborhood. The fascinating exception to this rule of thumb for the world's smallest countries, however, is Qatar, a small, dusty, and largely empty peninsula no larger than the state of Delaware that juts out from Saudi Arabia into the Persian Gulf. While Qatar has an overall population of around
It's part of
2.8
the
million
British
people, which is
Protectorate,
already
I seem to
smaller than
remember.
Albania, only 320,000 of them are actually citizens of the country, while the remaining nearly 2.5 million people are almost entirely foreign and expatriate.
Ooh, I think means of production should be managed by the people themselves. Okay. I find it rather idiotic that the majority does the work and yet who merely happen to own industries get an unfair share of it. And wealth should be proportionate to real value competition rather than a privilege. It makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm familiar with that kind of argument. What do you think would you say is fair? Because fairness can be very subjective. If it's fair to have equal division of reward for the labor, but there's also a lot of risk that is uneven within the development of a company. So I don't know how you can make it totally fair if different people have different contributions to a job or a role within a company. I mean, if there's and also it'll be worse if people obviously didn't want to take on more responsibilities due to their life circumstance and other people wanted to donate more of their life to a company. Do you think it's fair to hinder people to not to be able to reward people differently depending on how much effort and time they put into a company for those who, and then in comparison to those who prefer to have less hours and and other responsibilities? What do you think?
Labor that have come to the country from abroad. That means that with only around 320,000 citizens, Qatar's citizen population is only about the same size as tiny Vanuatu, a little island country in the Pacific Ocean. And yet, despite its tiny size in both land and people, Qatar commands global prestige, power, and influence on the same scale of countries that are dozens of times larger than it. For years now, Qatar has often been described as the wealthiest country in the world, with the highest GDP per capita of all the world's nations for multiple years in a row. The Qatari economy was larger than Ukraine's even before the Russian invasion, and with nearly 16 times fewer people, even when including all the foreign labor. The state of Qatar wields the 9th largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, with assets exceeding $450 billion, including a large 10.5% stake in the Volkswagen
So slave
Group,
labor gets
the
you.
outright ownership of the Paris Saint-Germain Football Club, the 7th most valuable football club in the entire world.
Paris
This is all in
Saint-Germain is owned
addition
by
to a
Qatar.
diversified
How
real estate
embarrassing.
portfolio that makes the state of Qatar the largest single property owner in London, including a 95% stake in the tallest building in Western Europe, the Shard, 100% ownership of the
I'm drunk
Harrods
there.
department store, a majority
Bad
stake in the
me.
Canary Wharf Financial Centre, and a 20% stake in London's Heathrow Airport, the 7th busiest airport in the world by international passenger traffic. This sovereign wealth fund's assets equate to more than $1.4 million per citizen of Qatar, by far the largest of any sovereign wealth fund in the world. The state-owned airline Qatar Airways is one of the largest and the most influential in the entire global aviation industry. Ranked by assets, Qatar Airways is the 9th largest airline in the world and is roughly equivalent in scale to Air France KLM, and they have even greater revenue numbers than Turkish Airlines. The state-owned media company Al Jazeera is one of the largest public media conglomerates in the world, second only to the BBC in the number of news bureaus located across the world. And perhaps most infamously of all, they are by far the smallest country and the first in the Arab world to ever host.
It's only because they've got all their money from oil and have atrocious human rights record. Oh, phone call. Don't think so.
The FIFA World Cup, which is
Oh,
currently
yeah, which they
ongoing as of
bought.
the release of this video. The Qatar of today is a fabulously wealthy country for its small size. And with that wealth also comes enormous global influence and power. And as a result,
God, get your tongue out there, ass. Is this... This is propaganda, government
I would
propaganda.
argue that Qatar is by far the most overpowered country in the 21st century world, with a level of influence ranking it as a middle power alongside states that are many, many times larger than it, like Turkey, South Korea, the Netherlands, or Canada. And they're only going to continue getting even more overpowered as this decade advances. But it wasn't always so certain to be this way, because Qatar only really started getting rich and overpowered pretty recently in the 1990s. For thousands of years before then, hardly anybody would have ever been able to guess how Qatar's fortunes would eventually turn out because, geographically, Qatar possesses very few advantages to help it become powerful. It's just a small, dusty, flat peninsula covered in deserts, with scarce arable land, little rainfall, and without even a single river to use for freshwater or irrigation. The prospects for anyone living here were bleak for thousands of years, and the only way anybody like the huge earth-shattering logic discovery of this were still fairly small. They were but a quarter of the reserves found in Kuwait in the United Arab Emirates, and only a tenth of those found just next door in Saudi Arabia. If it was only ever going to rely on oil, Qatar would never grow to be as...
Oh, let me read that in just a second. Just answering an email. No, it's fine. No, you type away. I'll answer it to the best of my ability. Just got to put these emails away. Doobie-doobie-doo. Okay, well, for instance, Musk comes from a privileged background, a white man from a diamond emerald mine-only company. Okay, so it's easy for him to be able to afford to invest in assets. Okay, easier. Now, imagine a refugee family seeking Sudan. Despite their efforts, it's unlikely they'll ever reach the same height as Musk. So it would leave to the best ability to their needs. Yep. All in all, an equitable system gives opportunities, but it makes it obvious a privilege is unfair. Okay, I understand that. That's a good point. Do you think you, as a family from a refugee seeking family, because people invest in ideas, right? So you don't necessarily need too much of your own capital to create a company, for one. So as providing the idea is good enough, you can convince investors to invest in your idea. If like a refugee had a PayPal idea, there's been plenty of examples of refugees actually coming from impoverished backgrounds and coming and making it, I guess, in America or many other places. I think it's unfair, if you're talking about fairness, to deprive someone just because think about what Elon Musk's parents had, how he made his money from PayPal, but even before then, let's say he got all his money from his parents. Is it unfair for his parents to be chastised because they decided to give their money to their son rather than for giving it away to like other causes, for example? So someone be chastised for investing in their children, even know how much it is, because the only other way is then by that means, just because someone comes from a privileged background, taking that money away would be kind of illiberal, because providing they played by the rules, they kind of deserve that. But that doesn't. But because then essentially, if someone has lots of money like Elon Musk, he then becomes an investor if he has a family office and his savings. So that money then is used to invest in smaller companies or bigger companies or ideas. So when, let's say, the Somali from what country? Oh, the refugee from Sudan or something wants to start a business, he needs access to a pool of money if he has a good enough idea. And that money doesn't come from the government. That comes from individual funds. So if he come up with let's say he got an idea of getting coffee from Sudan and bringing it over here, he would have to get money after proving that his concept works from people like Elon Musk and other funds like Rothschilds or JP Morgan or any sort of wealth management funds, or he can get a bank loan. So providing he can prove he can pay it back. So there's pros and cons to many different arguments. Unfortunately, yeah, we live in a world where people are fleeing wars and are refugees. Okay, again, it's uncommon for people to have, from impoverished backgrounds, to have access to those connections, social capital, as it's called sociologically. My argument isn't against his parents' aid, but instead against the lack of everyone having that right. The poor should be uplifted rather than the rich be held. Yeah, no, I do agree with that. The poor definitely should be uplifted. I think, yeah, there should be social programs to elevate people to their best of ability. Like in the UK, it doesn't matter what your background is. Everyone has the same opportunity for education, the same healthcare, the same choices in life. It's free all the way up to university, like free college, free school, and it rewards those who not aren't smarter but more driven, which is why in this country, like UK, like Indians and Nigerians usually fare better because of their different upbringings and their different cultural background. But the thing is, like, impoverishedness, for the UK, for example, I don't know essentially what country you're from, there is, although not perfect, an further equal, well, a kind of a, what's the best way to do it, a fairer attempt at life starting at a young age. But the thing is, the complicated part is to bring everybody up from the bottom level doesn't mean bringing everyone else down at the same time. You can do it both ways. You can elevate people from impoverished backgrounds without chastising the poor. I think that's the best way of doing it. I personally feel like if your company makes X amount of money, then the minimum wage of that company should be like, in comparison to like the highest earning. Like if your director makes over £500,000 a year, your minimum salary for an individual should be kind of held in that regard, so it follows up in that regard. So that's kind of small ways you can not unfairly balance the system too far. So I think it can be managed in that way. Right, back to Qatar.
Neighbors. But naturally, Qatar wanted to strike it big like the rest of them, and so they kept on searching for more. And then in 1971, they would finally end up making the geologic discovery of the century. And it wouldn't even be oil. With the assistance of Shell, what they ended up discovering was this: a big offshore natural gas field in the middle of the Persian Gulf, split roughly 60-40 between their own exclusive economic zone and Iran's. Their side of the field became known as the North Field, while Iran's became known as the South Pars Field. And its discovery would ultimately change both countries' destinies forever, because this field is by far the largest natural gas field ever discovered in the world.
Oh God, is this guy gonna criticize them at all?
Costly and too risky, and building out long pipelines to markets in Europe was just too ridiculous and expensive to even consider. They had both hoped that their discovery was oil because, unlike natural gas, oil is natural than oil. Product per capita in Qatar, more than 100 operational aircraft as of today. Investments into the industry of their own.
That sounds like he's tossing his head. There we go. Qatar history, class, and Western hypocrisy. Blocked its neighbors. I want to find.
Donald Trump has spent the last week whining and crying about the fact that nobody wants him, including hardcore MAGA supporters, to take...
Oof, God, that's not how you start a video. Forbes, let's try them.
Today on Forbes, why the Qataris are happy to dump their 747 on Trump. The royal family of Qatar, owner of one of the largest private jet fleets in the world, has been quietly getting rid of some of its biggest planes. It may have found the perfect taker for one of its Boeing 747 jumbo jets in President Donald Trump, who has been frustrated with the multi-year delays in replacing Air Force One. While many have speculated that the Qataris have offered Trump the luxurious plane to curry favor with the famously transactional president, there may be a simpler rationale. They just don't want it anymore. The royals have failed to sell the plane, which was put on the market in 2020, according to an archived listing. Giving it away could save Qatar's rulers a big chunk of change on maintenance and storage costs, aviation experts told Forbes. Making Trump happy would be an added bonus. Qatar, which has given away another blinged-out 747 and may have mothballed 2 more, epitomizes the fading demand for these huge, fuel-guzzling, highly personalized airplanes. There aren't many who want to buy them, and many of the governments and royal families who own them have been trying to ditch them over the past decade. Linus Bauer,
Mhm.
managing director of the Dubai-based aviation consulting firm BAA and Partners, told Forbes, quote, Qatar, like many modern states, is shifting toward leaner, more versatile aircraft, which off Trump would be, quote, a creative disposal strategy that marks, quote, a farewell to a bygone model of geopolitical theater in the skies. Of oil and GDP, extravagant fleet of by Trump, which was given the tail number A7A of Qatar from 2007 to 2013. It's one of 3 747-8s currently in the Royal Air Fleet, which is $167 million, not including the interior, which took 3 years to complete.
Yeah, bear in mind that they're going to have to strip the entire interior of this plane if he tries to use it for presidential purposes. I seem to recall hearing somebody say, one, it doesn't have refueling capabilities in the air, and two, it doesn't have secure telecommunication links. So it's going to cost more to refurbish this plane than he will actually use it. Chances are he's just going to use it after he's after he's been president, but we'll see.
And likely cost tens of millions of dollars. Unlike the passenger version of the 747-8, which can seat 467 people, the HBJ jet is a flying mansion designed for just 89 passengers, with 2 bedrooms, entertainment and meeting rooms, and a sumptuous beige and cream-colored interior created by the Parisian design house.
I think I need to upgrade my
that features
my
furnishings
platform.
made
Hang
of
on, let's
sycamore
get rid
and
of you.
wakapu wood, silk fabrics, and natural leather. The 747, which entered service in 1970, revolutionized air travel by making long-distance air travel affordable for a mass market. But its 4 big engines make for high costs in an era of higher fuel prices. As of 2019, the VIP version of the 747-8 cost an eye-popping $20 an hour to operate, according to Corporate Jet Investor.
Have I crashed?
Over the past decade, airlines have been retiring the 747 and
Oh, no.
Airbus's 4-engine A340 in favor of
Oh,
more
no, there it is.
efficient twin-engine wide-bodies like the Boeing 787 and Airbus A350.
There you go, just in
as
case
well
you
as
thought I wasn't
longer-range
professional enough.
narrow bodies. Like Qatar, a number of
Oh,
royal
oh.
families and governments have also been moving away from fuel-guzzling,
Look at that,
four-engine
you're
palaces in the sky,
practically in the
including
newsroom.
Saudi Arabia, Brunei, the UAE, and Germany.
Breaking news.
Beyond poor fuel efficiency, large ostentatious planes are a security risk, notes Richard Abulafia, an aerospace consultant
Oh, that's who I was
with
listening to.
Aerodynamic Advisory. He says, quote, these things are big targets.
That looks
Also,
terrible.
according to
I
John
like
Gaglia,
it.
a former airline mechanic and member of the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, giving
Nope.
the 747-8 to the
Nope.
U.S. would allow the Qataris to
Nope.
avoid maintenance costs that are only getting higher with the 747 fleet shrinking worldwide and
There it
fewer
is.
mechanics available who know how to work on them. For full coverage, check out Jeremy Bogaski's piece on Forbes.com. This is Kieran Meadows from Forbes. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh, God. I learned nothing. Let's see what happens.
President Donald Trump.
The Daily Show.
No! Respect his authority. Honestly, so much comes at us every day with him. I can't even sleep, organize thoughts, eat. And he knows. He knows he's toying with us. Here he is on Tuesday of last week.
We're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets, and I won't tell you on what.
Speaks like a 5-year-old.
Oh, good. So we won't know how to prepare. Should we wear our good pants or the ones we piss in? But fine.
God, that fake
Don't
laughter
tell
is
us this
killing me.
big announcement. Just tell us when.
And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave.
No. Right, I'm going to do BBC.
Here in London, Sir Keir Starmer has said that Britain is back on the world stage as he unveiled a new deal with the EU alongside senior European officials at a summit. The agreement, aimed at resetting relations with EU after Brexit, was hailed by the head of the European Council as a new chapter. Antonio Costa also describing the UK and the EU as neighbours, allies, partners and friends. While European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said today's agreement sent out a message to the world that in Europe we stick together. Let's take a look at what this agreement includes. There's a 12-year deal around fishing access for EU boats in UK waters. Confirmation there will be no increase in the amount of fish that EU vessels can catch. Some routine checks on animal and plant food products will be removed completely. That will allow goods to flow freely again, including between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. British tourists will be able to use more passport e-gates in Europe as well, and also agreement to cooperate further on a youth experience scheme that could see young people able to work and travel freely in Europe once again. There'll also be a new security and defence partnership. Watching it all for us unfold today from central London, where the summit has been held, is my colleague Rajini Vajanathan. Rajini.
I dream of Rajini.
Yeah, the proceedings now have wrapped up, Lucy, here at Lancaster House in central London. But make no mistake, whether you are pro or anti-Brexit, today has been a symbolic and an historic one. A number of deals, as you outlined there, that have been signed between the EU and the UK. And Sir Keir Starmer, in a news conference, taking questions afterwards, he was asked, is this backsliding away from Brexit, that kind of thing. Well, he said, no, this is all about moving forward. He used language that really was, in some ways, repetitive, but sending a similar message out. He's saying, we're moving forwards, not backwards. He said, this is a new era. This is
not going to have to lie. Keir Starmer's actually growing on me.
He said that Britain was
He's
back
come
on
from
the world stage,
zero,
the fact, of
like
course, that it's only been,
some of the worst
a few weeks
popularity
since the UK
ratings
signed
to
an
actually
agreement on trade
winning
with
some of the
US and,
centre
of course,
people
before that,
over.
with India. Despite some criticism from opposition parties, Sir Keir Starmer said this was a good agreement today for all sides.
BBC.
This landmark deal with the
EU deal.
A new partnership between an independent Britain and our allies in Europe. This is the first UK-EU summit. It marks a new era in our relationship.
There's a terrible microphone setup.
And this deal is a win-win. It delivers what
It's a win-win.
the public voted for last
Oh, that's better. Someone's got fired for that.
Unprecedented access to the EU market, the best of any country outside of the EU or EFTA.
Right, I need to steal that link.
Well, as the Prime Minister and the UK government have been saying even before all of these deals were agreed and announced, to them this marks a reset moment for relations between the EU and the UK. And make no mistake, this does bring the EU and the UK closer together with these cooperation agreements, although it doesn't tear up much of the principles and agreements of Brexit. Well, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the EU Commission, said this was a new beginning for old friends. Let's have a listen to what she had
Oh,
to
that's
say at that
sweet.
news conference.
What we have agreed today is historic. It will make a real difference to people in the UK and across our union. But the message we are sending to the world today is equally, if not more important. It is a message that at a time of global instability and when our continent faces the greatest threat it has for generations, we in Europe stick together.
Ursula von der Leyen there. Well, we are getting some
great job for Keir Starmer for the
across
EU
political
relations.
spectrum. We've had some
It's nice how he's not
from the
trying to undo any of the Brexit stuff.
Kemi Badenoch. Shortly after those announcements, Ms Badenoch said she was gobsmacked by the series of deals that the Prime Minister signed. She said the deal on fishing, that we'll go into a bit more detail with my colleague Henry Zeffman in a moment, was a sellout. And she said that that has taken the UK back to square one. We should be using opportunities of leaving the European Union and not taking steps back. Now, she did welcome some news, though. She welcomed.
Well, you're going to have to make trade deals. I mean, when you leave the European Union, you have to make trade deals with the EU. So I don't really know what she's moaning about.
Now rather than the non-EU lane when they go overseas to Europe. And also there was some movement on pet passports, but she said she had concerns about what the UK had given away in concessions. Well, let's discuss a bit more about what we heard today and what was agreed today in the building behind us with our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman. Of course, this is a big moment, whichever way you look at it. But if we look back to Brexit 2016 and then, of course, 2020, when agreements were finally made for a UK post-Brexit, there was a lot of politics, a lot of emotion. How much of that existing deal has, in reality, been ripped up?
Well, the fundamentals of the UK's post-Brexit relationship with the EU are unchanged. Some of the earliest debates post-Brexit, and ultimately actually they were settled by Theresa May, not Boris Johnson, were would the UK remain part of the single market, yes or no? And the answer was no. Would the UK remain part of the customs union, yes or no? And the answer to that was no as well. Keir Starmer is not altering those fundamentals. But what he is doing within those parameters is trying to move much closer to the European Union. That is openly what he is trying to achieve here. The big ticket items today, which
he's free to move towards the European Union. That's totally fine, providing they don't start dictating what we do as a country.
Agricultural goods from the UK to the EU. And
I'll know more about these fishing waters, though.
Fishing quotas, fishing rights for European vessels in UK waters for 12 years. That might prove quite controversial. Those are two fairly technical elements, but ultimately, as we learned during the Brexit negotiation years, the post-Brexit relationship between the UK and the EU amounts to an accumulation of small technical details, which overall add up to a really important sense of what the relationship is.
Okay, Henry Zeffman, thank you very much for your assessment of the events here today. Well, there's plenty more analysis on the BBC News website. And if you want to go through in detail all of the different agreements on defence, security...
Give me more news. Oh, I see what the Telegraph said.
Good morning, dear Prime Minister, dear Keir, dear Ursula, dear ministers, dear representative, dear Maros. Let me begin by thanking Prime Minister Keir Starmer for hosting in London for what has been a timely and truly productive summit. A few months ago, Prime Minister, you spoke of your ambition to reset the relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union. Today, I'm proud to say we together have delivered on that ambition. You succeeded, we all succeeded. The agreements we have reached today mark not just progress, but a new chapter in the relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union. The start of a renewed and strengthened strategic partnership. Over the past months, we have worked tirelessly and to rebuild trust. We have worked tirelessly and...
Ooh. I think I did the very same political compass test as you did. I got outsider left in the graph. My position almost at Caroline Lucas. Let me just look at who that is. That's a dead flower. I got outsider left. That's quite far on the left, isn't it? Let's have a look. Oh yeah, so see this political compass test here. I avoided that one because it looked too cheap. I think I went down to like one of these. Sorry, I should have said that before. But this one, if you click on it, it looks a bit like it looks like it was made in 1995. I want to see what the outsider left is. Whereabouts is the outsider left? Gandhi. Hang on. Sorry, I don't know who Caroline Lucas is. Let's have a little look. You're not Gandhi, I take it. There's Caroline Lucas. Caroline Patricia Lucas, a British politician. She did the Green Party. Oh, okay. Green parties are known as the watermelon party. They say they're green on the outside but red on the inside. So does that accurately represent your position? Gandhi, Stalin, Hitler, Thatcher, Friedman, Gandhi, Stalin. I take it you're more Stalin over Thatcher then.
To rebuild trust.
Do a few. It's good to get like a good mix of where you sit.
In December, in an increasingly volatile world, deeper collaboration between like-minded partners, natural allies like us.
My job when I created this channel was to bring comedy into politics, and I find it really hard because it's just such harrowing news that comes through. But trade deals we can do optimistically.
There, I felt a new positive energy in our.
Now you got to ask yourself, like, why do you believe these things? Like, I do like the idea of equality, us being more equal, but it all depends on where you think it should come at the price of individual liberty. Because then you got to say, okay, so in an ideal world, give me a country in history that has reached your expectations of what a successful country is and how they come about doing it.
The transatlantic partnership and to uphold international law and defending the United Nations Charter amid growing security threats. We have been proud of the fruits of that collective
my internet's playing up.
A joint statement on cooperation on global issues, a security on defense partnership, and a common understanding and a renewed agenda for cooperation. These agreements represent more than just words on paper. They are a reflection of our shared commitments to security, to prosperity, to development, and to the people we serve on both sides of the channel. Our relationship